What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my Week 7 college football power rankings. Let's get into it here. Dropping from my rankings, I have Penn State and Texas, the two biggest names here. Obviously, Penn State losing on the road to UCLA, Texas losing to Florida on the road, and then Louisville losing a heartbreaker at home in OT to Virginia. And Florida State, obviously, I don't want to say getting blown out, but definitely didn't really have a chance because the scoreboard looks a lot closer than it actually was there in the fourth quarter. Those four teams are still in my others receiving votes. And then Washington, USC, Nebraska, teams out of the Big Ten, also just missing the cut. TCU and Utah out of the Big 12 just missed the cut. And then I have North Texas, and North Texas plays USF this week. So whoever wins that more than likely is going to be joining my top 25 next week. But the reason I dropped Penn State and Texas is because Texas has 3 wins. They're 3-2. But those 3 wins were against San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston. And then their losses are against Power Four opponents. They get Oklahoma this week in the shootout. And I just have no confidence in Texas moving forward. I mean, Florida State, the win over Bama at the beginning of the year is looking better for them, but they're just not helping their case here now with 2 losses. And then I think TCU and Utah in the Big 12, those two teams are going to link up eventually, and I think that's going to be a huge game. But for the most part, right now, they're just 1 or 2 losses away from getting into the top 25. And talking about my top 25, I have Arizona State joining the club this week. They were off, but they are more than deserving. And it's really going to be whoever wins that Arizona State Utah game is going to be in my top 25 next week as well. USF, Memphis blow out their respective teams there in the American, so they move up a spot. And like I said, USF gets North Texas on the road. Huge game for them. Notre Dame takes care of business against Boise State. It wasn't a big offensive explosion as it has been the last 2 weeks, but their defense played great. And the offense still put up 28 to take care of Boise State and get that win to get over 500 for the first time this year. And then you had Illinois joining the rankings as well. I'm putting them back up here because, they did get blown out to Indiana, but they've responded well with a good win over Purdue. But how are we going to see those rankings affect this week as, they get Ohio State at home? Then my 16 through 20, I have Iowa State. They had a tough loss against Cincy on the road to suffer their first loss, but it's going to be a good loss because Cincinnati only has 1 loss this year. They've been playing some good football since they lost to Nebraska by 3 to start the year off. And I think these two teams possibly could meet up at the end of the year in the Big 12 championship the way that they are playing. Iowa State has to go to Colorado. UCF at home for Cincinnati. So these two teams should win these games here and keep the train rolling here. Iowa State's halfway through the season, and I think they're very happy for where they're at. Talking about a team that they're happy where they're at going into their off week, it's going to be Virginia being 5-1, 3-0 in conference play because you have to remember that the NC State game that they lost was a non-conference game because it was scheduled before the conference realignments and all that stuff, and they needed someone to play, so it was NC State. So for them, that benefits them huge moving forward. And, Virginia squeaked out one in OT against Louisville, and then obviously beat Florida State at home in OT. So they're escaping by a thread. That's why I didn't have them any higher, but they're more than deserving here to be my top 25. Michigan goes to 17. Moving up 5 just because some teams were losing, obviously. So a lot of teams, got to move up, and that's benefiting Michigan. Once again, their only loss is on the road to Oklahoma. And for them, the Oklahoma win or loss is getting better and better because they keep on winning. But they go to USC, which could be a huge game for them. If they can win this game, I mean, the only loss I can honestly see them taking, if everything goes well on paper, it's going to be Ohio State. And Michigan could make the case that at 10-2, they get into the playoff with a true freshman quarterback. And then talking about Vandy, Vandy only falls 2 spots here to me because the resume that they've built so far this year through the first 6 games is pretty good. Compared to a lot of other teams that are 5-1, Vanderbilt, is 1-1 in conference play, obviously with their loss being to Alabama yesterday on the road. And I like what they're building out there. Diego Pavia is looking for his 10th year of eligibility, it feels like, but this team has the gauntlet when they return, and we're going to really find out who this Vandy team is because after that bye, it's LSU, Missouri, at Texas. And those 3 games are going to we're going to really find out how good this Vanderbilt team really is. Then 11 through 15, you get 3 SEC teams, 11, 12, and 13, just missing my top 10. All 3 of them were off last week, and LSU and Tennessee fall just because some teams jumped them because they played and won some big games. Then Missouri moves up three just because some other teams were losing. But LSU, Tennessee should take care of business at home this week. And then Missouri, it's going to be a big game for them because we see who they are going to be with Bo Pribula against that Alabama team that, like I said, just beat Vandy at home. So now they go on the road to face Missouri at home in a huge game there in SEC play. Georgia Tech moves up. I could possibly make the argument they could be in my top 10, but from where I've ranked them before, um, I just got to put them outside the top 10. They beat Virginia Tech here, and it is kind of a blowout, and these other three teams in front of them kind of struggle a little bit. I think I might put my case there for them in the top 10. Then BYU at 15. Slowly but surely, this team keeps on winning. Like I said, I've had them preseason ranked around 20th. I can't remember the exact spot, but they were right around here this whole time. And not too many people were high on them. I'm always high on BYU because they always play well in September, October, and then that's in November when they kind of struggle and fall off. But there's no signs of that right now. They're looking good. Bear Brockmeyer is playing really good. They're 5-0, almost halfway through the season. A tougher game this week, though, at Arizona. Then my top 10, we're going to go through 6 through 10. Oklahoma at 6 destroys Kent State. Obviously, they're without John Mateer, but it didn't really show up that much because defense didn't let them score. The offense still put up 44, but it's a much tougher test this week, we think, against Texas, who isn't ranked in the AP poll. Like I said, two bad losses. The resume is awful. Arch Manning is playing all right, but it's not superstar worthy. So Oklahoma, I would not be surprised if they are favored by at least a touchdown in this matchup. Texas A&M takes care of Mississippi State. I thought that was going to be a lot closer than the game actually was, but really shows that A&M is legit this year and that they could possibly run the table here for the next few weeks as they get Florida. Alabama, another tough test for them as they go to Missouri. And the week one loss to Florida State, it's kind of put way in the rear view mirror at this point because you beat Vandy. You can go into Missouri and beat them. No one's going to be talking about that one loss to Florida State unless you have another really bad loss. Then that's going to kind of bring up those two losses. But I like what Bama's doing right now. They're just steamrolling opponents, doing what they got to do to get back on track, and that's exactly what they're doing. At number 9, I have Texas Tech, and beating Houston, who was undefeated at the time, gives me the validation that this team is a top 10 team moving forward. They get Kansas this week. I think it's just as good as Houston, but this one's at home. Texas Tech could end up winning this whole Big 12 here, and I really don't see them struggling here against Kansas at home, but Jalen Daniels does prevent a problem for a lot of defenses, so it could be a close game there in the first half. And then at Georgia at 10, they're moving in my top 10 again. Um, beat Kentucky at home, get Auburn on the road, should win there. I would not be surprised if Georgia kind of waits for some other SEC teams to lose because, I already have three SEC teams in front of them here, OU, Texas A&M, and Alabama. But somehow, some way, I feel like Georgia's just going to slowly climb up to the top 5 of my rankings. And we see it every year. They lose one game and then everybody's out on them, but they just slowly chip away. And somehow, some way, they're either me playing for the last spot in the SEC championship with a week or two to go. Then 1 through 5. I don't think too many of you predicted to have 3 Big Ten teams in the top 5 at this point in the season. Maybe Ohio State and Oregon, but that third one, it was probably going to be Penn State and not Indiana because what Indiana's building, Curt Cignetti off of last year's success looks even better. And talking about that Oregon team, what they did to Penn State, it's kind of not looking like it's as um, good as it was in that whiteout environment because Penn State does not look good anymore. So another huge win for Oregon could be on deck this week at home against Indiana. But if Indiana goes in there and gets beats the number 3 team in the country in the AP poll, and they get that win, there's the case that they can put them at number 1 at this point in what they're doing because of that resume that they have built. And talking about resumes you have built, that's why I'm moving Miami to number 2 over Oregon. I get that win, like I said, at Penn State, but now it doesn't mean as much after they just lost to UCLA. Miami's beat Florida State. Obviously, they beat USF. They beat Notre Dame. And Oregon just has that Penn State win that really sticks out. So Miami moves up to 2 for me. And at number 1, of course, I have Ohio State. There's no way I shouldn't have Ohio State at number 1. I can get the argument for Miami at number 1, but I'm just a guy that you won the national championship last year. You're more than deserving of that top spot until someone knocks you off. And we're going to see this week because it's their toughest game they've got, I think, so far this year is going on the road to Illinois because And like I said, the Texas game at home was good, but what they've become, it was week one, and we didn't really know what was going to happen there after the fact. And now we know, and Illinois is looking like they could beat Texas right now. So tough matchup there for Ohio State this week going on the road. And the team I haven't talked about is Ole Miss and what they are building there. This is looking good for Ole Miss because with all these SEC teams slowly losing and I don't want to say fading out of the picture, but at this point, Ole Miss is 3-0 in conference play. They only have five more conference games. Obviously, this week they get Washington State, which they should cream and move to 6-0. And why can't this Ole Miss team not just make the SEC championship, but win it? Because what Trinidad Chambliss is doing, the great story from Ferris State to a backup to winning the job this year and leading this team to where they are now. It's kind of tough to root against Lane Kiffin this year. That's going to be it from our Week 7 power rankings. Check back next week to see if your team made the cut. Until next time, the Bench Buddies are out.